Alrighty, welcome in to another episode here with Amy again, and was just chatting with her before we started and thinking about a few different directions that we can go here. And I keep a running list of podcast topics and thinking about where do we want to go. And there's a few things that I do want to talk about, but um, feel like we were very tactical for a period of time there. Where we did, the whole series on the hierarchy of fat loss, and then we did the whole series on the 4 S's of fat loss. And so, and we've had a couple other things here and there, but there's more tactical things for us to do 100%. And we'll dive into that. But want to maybe spend a little bit of a time thinking about the mindset aspect of things when it comes to fitness in general, just on the heels of a lot of conversations that I've been having this week, interactions I've been having, and even just with my kids. And so this might turn into a series. It might be a one-off. We'll see how today goes. But going to be talking about limiting beliefs in the ways in which the stories that we tell ourselves can determine what we do. And this is going to maybe be, you're going to be like, why is a fitness coach, nutrition coach talking about psychology, basically? And I'll start by saying this. So 3 of my best friends in the entire world are therapists, are mental health professionals. And it's fun to have conversations with them because when I have conversations with them about things that are, going on and things like that, and they tell me, and it's accurate, they're like, people share with you oftentimes a lot of things, even more deep at times than they share with us. And it's because the hurdles to fitness are not often the tactics. The tactics are important, right? But it's the ability to stay consistent with them, the ability to do them long term, the persevere, all these types of things. Like the mindset piece of it is where we can get hung up a lot. And so when I'm talking with clients, when we're having our calls and things like that, and you remember this, like when we talk about stuff, like after like the first 3 calls, we basically aren't talking much about your workouts or your nutrition too much anymore. Like we are to some degree, but it's in the context of what are the things that we're trying to do, if that makes any sense. So when we think about limiting beliefs, and I say this in a way that I hope that comes across well, most of my job is helping people unravel a lifetime of ways of perceiving themselves and perceiving food and perceiving exercise, because we've been taught it from our experiences, from our friends, from our family, and it puts us in a certain situation. And I know that this is something, within your story is a very real thing as well.
Oh yeah, we get bombarded from not just family, but like a lot of media, a lot of kind of everywhere you look, there's someone telling you that this is the way to do things or this is the way to be, and kind of trying to wade through that to see what's real and what's BS. So that's where you're really helpful. It was that call that was the what's your why? That was the call. I think that's like when you say that your clients will kind of tell you more things than they would tell a therapist necessarily. It's because like to get to that why, you have to like strip bare your soul to figure out the why. And once you've already done that, like I'm already vulnerable. Might as well just share the rest of it.
Yeah. 100%. But we have to.
Yeah.
We have to go to that level of depth and do that level of work.
Mm-hmm.
Because I make a lot of parallels with my business, and I just posted yesterday. So did a post yesterday about this. So my business, and this is not to toot my own horn or anything like that, but as a kind of a cool realization was that from a revenue perspective, my business doubled from 2022 to 2023. It's not
That's
a
very exciting.
it was very exciting. It's not a lucrative number by any stretch of the imagination. I know coaches who are in my similar stage who make what I made last year in a month. Like it's not like, okay, this is a crazy thing, but doubling is relative to me.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, that's twice, you know what I mean? And more importantly to me, I also helped twice as many people,
Mm-hmm.
which was huge. I had twice as many clients over the course of the year. I
Mm-hmm.
actually went back and I looked. It was kind of a cool exercise. Like, hey, who was a client during this period of time versus 2022 versus 2023.
Mm-hmm.
And I also did it in the context of, I'm the primary caregiver at home. Like I have 3.5 on a good week working days.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so a lot of the parallels that I draw here with the fitness thing is apply to me on the business side of things, which is
Mm-hmm.
somebody could tell me all the tactics in the world on how to grow my business. But unless I implement those and I actually do them with consistency and with excellence, I'm going to constantly be looking for the next thing. And that was what it was for me in my business for a long time. So I
Mm-hmm.
started online in like June or July of 2020 because I had a newborn son and COVID, and I was like, I don't know what's going to happen here. I got to figure
Mm-hmm.
something out. And so I bought a program and did it, kind of off and on for a little bit, and then wasn't making a lot of progress. And I was like, oh, this program doesn't work for me. And then got another program and did it off and on for a little bit. Didn't make a ton of progress. And I was like, oh, this program doesn't work for me. And at that point, I was thousands of dollars invested into trying like these programs and trying to make this business. Now I'd made some money back, and I'd made back my investment, but not
Mm-hmm.
a lot more. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like it wasn't as if this thing had been growing. And so it was, I think I've shared a little bit of this story before. Let me know if I have, but it was October October of 2021. So at this point, I had done each of these two. I did one in June, and then I did another one in like March of 2021. So June of 2020, March of 2021. So I was like, and this thing just isn't quite working the way that I want it to. And so October of 2021, we bought our house that I'm sitting in right now.
Mm-hmm.
November of 2021, the twins were born. And so at
No
that point,
chill.
and we bought a minivan in there, but that's like not even on
Well,
the not even on the spectrum of big
that
things.
is a requirement for if you have three very small children. You need to be able to
Yes.
access them from all sides.
Yes. So we had 3 kids, 19-month-old and then newborn twins.
Mm-hmm.
This is November 2021. And I was unsure. So this is going to be the first kind of limiting belief piece of it for me, which was like, I always had in the back of my head. Have I shared this on the podcast before? I don't know if I have.
Bits and pieces, but I don't think the whole thing.
I always had in the back of my head, like, I don't know if this is the long-term play in terms of training. Like, I'm not positive that I'm going to be able to do this. And that there was limiting beliefs associated with that. And I'll get to those in a second, but I would after 6 months of doing a program, I would be like, this isn't working, and then I would go on jobs.com or Indeed, and I would look up like analyst jobs
Yes.
in the area for different companies and things like that, because I did that in college, and I was like, okay, I could just go do that, right? It's a quote unquote normal job, steady
Mm-hmm.
job, I have
Mm-hmm.
salary and whatever, and I wouldn't necessarily enjoy it as much, but I wouldn't hate it, and so I can go do this thing. And
Mm-hmm.
it was in November of 2021. Now we have a house and we have 3 kids, and I was like, okay, I have to make a call one way or the other here. Like, I either have to commit to training and be like, okay, this is what I do now, but I can't do a half measure here
Mm-hmm.
where I have 1 foot in, 1 foot out. I have to jump in. And I interviewed for another job at an analyst company. It was in December of 2021. I interviewed for
Mm-hmm.
another job, and they had done some restructuring. And I was like, okay, through the interview process, I was like, I don't want to go do that. I
Mm-hmm.
just don't want to go do that. And it was a moment where I was like, okay, I'm not going to go do that. I'm gonna dive into the training thing. And so March of 2021, I spent more than I had spent on the previous 2 programs combined for another mentorship. And so we're coming up on 2 years that I've been in that mentorship. And since that point, so from 2021 to 2022, I doubled. 2022 to 2023, I doubled. And 2020, wait, I said this wrong. So 2021 to 2022, I've doubled 3 times. I don't remember how I should figure that out. I should be able to do that math. But the idea being, like, finally was a catalyst for me to, like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, like, we're moving in the right direction here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it took, like, I like what it is that I'm doing,
Mm-hmm.
within this mentorship, but there's nothing that we're doing here that is totally inventive, right? There's nothing that's as part of this mentorship that's unique, like 100% unique. Like, I could have potentially have gotten similar or somewhat similar results from either of the other ones. Neither of them were as good.
Mm-hmm.
I'll own that. But they were not the limiting factor
Mm-hmm.
on my growth. I was the limiting factor on my
Mm-hmm.
growth because I wasn't doing what they said that I ought to be doing. Right? They had laid out, hey, here's the plan, and I didn't do the plan. The only difference between those and this one is maybe the plan was a little bit better, the support was a little bit better, but I actually did what they asked me to do.
Mm-hmm.
I was the limiting factor.
Mm-hmm.
So when we think about why we're not making progress or why we can't seem to do this, why we can't, it's very easy to be like, oh, I haven't found the right thing yet. And that's usually not the answer. So somebody has asked me, so in the past, like, hey, what distinguishes your program from, other coaches? And my answer is maybe surprising. It's nothing.
Mm-hmm.
There are other coaches out there that are there. It's not potentially. There are 100% other coaches out there that are more qualified than me, on paper or otherwise. And I'm not going to sit here and say that I have found the new right solution. This is the best strategy, and anybody trying to do that is lying to you,
Mm-hmm.
right? If they say I've discovered this is the way.
And they're less a trainer and more a salesperson at that point.
Yeah, it's a marketing tactic. It's a
Mm-hmm.
marketing tactic. And so that's not what I'm looking to do. The things, I have a lot of friends in the industry, and we all agree on 95% of things. We probably disagree on 5%, but that 5% is not at all essential, right? Like, the
Mm-hmm.
main building blocks we all kind of agree on. So you could get good results with another coach. You can maybe get better results with another coach.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing that I bring to the table that is unique is me. Like, it's the only
Mm-hmm.
thing I bring to the table. It's my experience. It's the fact that I have, I work with a lot of parents, and not exclusively parents, but I have a lot of grandparents too. But a lot of it is my unique experience. Like, hey, I got 3 small kids. I have parents who have gone through ebbs and flows of their own fitness journey. So I understand what it's like, from that perspective, from, somebody who's in the grandparent stage of life, people who are in different stages of parenthood.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm a believer. And so I have a lot of conversations with other Christians, and I can bring that context to it. And that doesn't mean that I have to, but like, I bring me to the
Mm-hmm.
conversation, and that's what I have that's unique. And so the answer is often not I need a different strategy.
Mm-hmm.
The answer is I need to implement and be consistent with a strategy. This is the process versus the outcome stuff that we
Mm-hmm.
talked about on the last episode. Like, we oftentimes are chasing the outcome, and we don't recognize that we're not doing the process. It's not that the
Mm-hmm.
process is faulty. It's that we're not doing the process consistently enough to know whether it is or not.
Right. You've introduced too many variables.
Yes. And so if we're doing the process consistently and not seeing results, then we can look at the process. That was the conversation last time. And so there
Yeah.
was a point with my second mentorship where I was doing a lot of things well, but there was a hang up. And I was like, okay, so there's something wrong with the process here.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't that I wasn't necessarily doing everything. I was doing what was said to do, but it wasn't coming all the way to fruition. So there was an issue with the
Mm-hmm.
process. And so
Mm-hmm.
I could come to them and be like, there's an issue with the process. Like, I'm doing what you told me to do, but I'm clearly not doing it well enough. So
Mm-hmm.
I need to make some adjustments here. And that becomes an easier conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And having somebody to help you walk through that is super relevant. So when we
Oh,
think about
absolutely.
limiting beliefs, this is going to be a little bit of an odd story, but follow me here. It's been
Would
something
it
I've been
be
like,
would it be our podcast if there wasn't some odd story
an
that
odd story.
like on the surface does not link at all? But if you stick with it and you follow Jeff's weird rabbit hole, you'll get there.
All right, you ready? This
I'm
is
ready.
going to be the
Oh,
most.
I am ready. My coffee is extra
this has been
hot.
a
I am
post.
ready.
This has been a post that I've been thinking about making, and I still might do. But Paw Patrol.
Warn me! I had a mouthful of hot coffee.
Just that's where we're going. So
Are we talking about Sky? I love Sky. Are we talking about
yes,
Sky?
we are talking.
Yeah,
about
I love
Sky.
her.
So
She's my girl.
We were talking about Sky.
Woo!
So for Christmas, my kids had never really watched Paw Patrol. Not against it. We just had never really got into it. But for
It was earlier than your kids. Like Emerson
Yeah.
watched Paw Patrol, and then it kind of
Yeah.
petered out, and Bluey took over for the
Bluey,
general population of kids.
Yes, which is sensational. But
it's
Paw
awesome.
Patrol. So Megan's aunt and uncle, we had like Christmas with them on New Year's Day or something like that, and their kids are, high school, middle school, elementary school. So they have 3 kids in each of those stages. So their kids grew up with Paw Patrol, right? That was their kind of thing. And so they just got a little thing for each of the kids, and they got them each like a Paw Patrol truck or car, And my kids are like, "This is a cool car, and there's a dog in it," but they don't know, they don't know that that's Chase, right? And that's whatever. And so we were like, okay, we maybe we introduce this to them, but I had never seen it. I'm like, I don't know what it is.
They're cute.
And there's a movie. So I was like, okay, because I was like, I don't know about the TV show here. So like our first introduction to it was the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a movie, and then there's a second movie, and now we've like started to watch the TV show. And my comment to Megan, I was like, they really upped the production value for the movie versus the TV show. It's like very,
Yes.
very different.
Yeah.
So we're gonna talk about the second movie here.
Okay.
So
I'm
it's
ready.
called the Mighty Pups.
The Mighty Pups.
Even if you haven't seen it, so the premise of this movie is, or the kind of crux of it is Sky, who's the only girl pup. She's also the
Mm-hmm.
smallest pup. That's how she's known. She's
Mm-hmm.
the smallest pup, and she's the one who flies. She flies around, and in the Mighty movie, she's got this cool crystal. And so now they have superpowers. Like, this is, the extent of the universe that we're getting into.
Are you gonna spoil the movie for me? Because I haven't seen it.
I'm 100% going to spoil the movie for you.
Okay. All right. I guess I'll forgive you.
All right, to be fair, right?
I'm not gonna watch it.
There are no new movies, right? They just like take storylines and they apply it. So Paw Patrol 2 is Rudy.
Oh.
Okay. So I could have done this with Rudy, but
movie.
Paw Patrol is what's on my mind. Rudy's a little bit more involved, obviously. So the premise of the movie is they have these superpowered crystals, and they all have superpowers. And Sky gets hers stolen, and it's a whole thing. They get it back, and she is kind of navigating the like feeling like she's failed and she's so small and she's not quite good enough and all of these types of things. Like, that's kind of the tension in the movie for Sky is she's always been the littlest. She's always kind of been the runt, and she's kind of dealing with this. Like, I'm not quite good enough. Like, I was the one who got my crystal stolen. Nobody else did. Like, that's the thing that she's navigating. And the end of the movie, this is like gonna sound ridiculous. There's meteors coming to Earth. This is essentially, as there would be, right? So there's meteors coming to Earth, and Ryder, who's the boy who's kind of in charge of them, says to Sky, like, "All right, meteors are coming." He says to Sky, because she's got superpowers, he's like, "Sky, I need you to fly up there and destroy as many meteors as you can." And she's like,
"So it's Rudy / Armageddon."
A little bit.
Yeah.
Well, Sweet. Armageddon was one big meteor. There's a lot of things going on. It felt a little bit like the Avengers too. Like, she's Iron Man at the end of this thing. Like, it's a little bit of, there's a lot of stories, right? That, again, there's no new movies. They just link them all together. And she says to him, like, "Are you sure I can do it even after everything?" Right? So she has this limiting belief, like, I can't do it. Like, I'm not big enough. I'm not strong enough. I've failed so many times throughout even the story. And Ryder looks at her and he said, "You're the reason." So the phrase, the catchphrase of Paw Patrol is, "No problem's too big, no pup's too small." Right? That's, or no whatever's too big, no pup's too small. And that's kind of the catchphrase. And he looks at her and he says, "You're the reason I started saying no pup's too small." And she's like, "Okay, I can go do it." So this is, I'm gonna bring the context back to this at the end here. I definitely can't do this as a post. This is too long. I'd have to explain the whole movie. I'd have to be like, go watch Paw Patrol and then come back and I'll talk to you about this.
Your assignment
is go do this. If you haven't done it, don't watch the rest of this. So then she's going, right? She's shooting them down in her plane. Her plane gets shut down, but she can fly, and so she's like going through and she's like smashing the meteors, right? And she's doing this whole thing. And it's like, "Yeah, go Sky!" Like, she smashes them all, and she's like, "Crushed it, go me!" And then Ryder gets like an alert thing, and he goes, "There's a huge meteor, right? Like, giant, too big." And he's like, "Sky, get out of there! Like, save yourself. It's too big." And I got chills, and I'm actually pumped up, like, from this. And she turns and she looks at it and she goes, "No pup's too small." And then she like pounds her fists together and she gets this like cape of like thing, and then she goes and she's just like going up to it, right? And they do a montage as she's going up to it of all of the moments throughout the movie where she was too small, right? Where she was vulnerable, and then into the moments where she was big enough, powerful enough, right? Like the limiting beliefs into this thing, and she keeps, no, Pop's too small. Blows the thing up, right? Saves the world, the whole thing. I'm all amped up right now. Like,
Oh, yeah.
Like I literally
amped.
say to, like, I say to Megan, I'm like, yes, guy, go get it. I'm like, she's like, what are you doing? Every time I'm like, no, Pop's too small.
God, you're lucky you're funny.
Because I'm a nerd.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't have a lot. I'm a big nerd. Yeah, no. I think
Glad
the
that Megan
lesson
could
the
see
lesson
past
from
it.
this episode is God bless Megan, right? Like I'm lucky to be married.
But that's the lesson of almost every episode. We bring that back somehow. Like,
fair enough. So why did I tell this story? And maybe you can put the pieces together. But there's two sides to this. One, Sky has had limiting beliefs her whole life because of the perceptions of the realities that she faced, right? She was the runt of the litter. She was left, and she's had a lot of limiting beliefs where she was like, I'm not big enough. I'm not strong enough. I can't do this. Right. And so this was always sort of the story that she told herself is like, I'm not big enough, strong enough, whatever, to do this. It took a person to say to her in the midst of that, that's not true. The story you're telling yourself is not true. Like, you can do this. That's what Ryder said. Like, you're the reason I said no, Pop's too small. Like, you can do this. In that moment, she then started to say, oh, I can do this. So then she starts and goes to do it, right? She starts destroying all the meteors. Even her plane goes down, right? That would normally be a catalyst for her to go the other direction and be like, oh, I can't do this. But now she's like, no, I got to ditch my jet and I can do this just with my bare hands because I'm badass, right? But then in the moment, and this is the pivotal part of this, Ryder, who had 5 minutes earlier in the movie been the one to confront her limiting belief and tell her, you're the reason I said no, Pop's too small. Like, you can do this. 5 minutes later in the movie, the giant meteor's coming, and he says to her, it's too big. Save yourself. Not out of malice or whatever, but what has happened from her original moment from that is now she, despite somebody else telling her, not really directly, but kind of, you're too small, she now says, no, Pop's too small. She now has overcome that limiting belief because of two things. One, somebody told her, confronted the lie, and then she lived, did action in light of the power of who she actually is, and it confirmed to her that no, Pup is too small. So then it doesn't matter what anybody else says. It was internal. She knew it to be true. Because in the moment where we have these limiting beliefs, it's very difficult for us to truly believe when somebody else tells us you're not this, or you can do this, or whatever it is, if we don't truly believe it about ourselves, because our experience has told us, I can't do it. All of her experiences have told her that she can't do it. And so she was going into it like that very first thing that she shut down. Even though Ryder gave her permission to do it, right? No, you're the reason I said no, Pop's too small. She was a little nervous to go do it, but then she started to do it, and she's like, oh, I'm not too small to do this. And then she did another one. She killed another one and another one. And then all of a sudden she's like, okay, I'm doing pretty well. Then when the hiccup comes and she does another step where now I'm not doing it even in a jet, I'm doing it with my bare hands. Now it's more and more and more. And she's doing all of these things. And in the span of this time, she has confronted what she thinks is what she has believed is true about her. And she's recognized now that what he said, no, Pup is too small, is true because she did action. She took action in light of that. And so now, even when now confronted with something that is maybe too big, a new challenge, she's prepared for it because she recognizes who she really is. She no longer has the limiting belief, and that even other people's limiting beliefs no longer affect her because she knows that she can do it.
Mm-hmm. Seeing the success.
Yes. But here's and I'm going to bring this all back to us here, and I'm going to tell, stories for other people and like practically here.
Mm.
Totally lost my train of thought. What did you just say?
Success.
Seeing the success.
Yep.
We don't see the success unless we do it even when we don't believe in ourselves.
Mm. That's when it's the hardest to get the motivation.
Yes. And
that's why we need the Jeffs.
Well, we need somebody to tell us that we can do this.
Mm-hmm.
And that even when we think that we can't, they tell us that we can. Whether it's a coach, whoever it is, right? Sometimes we need that external thing, but we talked about this on the 23 lessons things, right? Expectation drives perception, perception drives reality. If I expect to fail, then when something comes my way or a hiccup comes my way, then I'm perceived that I'm failing. So then I do what I always expected I was going to do.
And it fulfills what you're...
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Exactly.
So
sorry, it's early. My brain's not working all the way.
No, you're good. If in order for us to have success, we have to do it even when we don't fully believe in ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And then we experience success, so then we believe in ourselves a little bit more. This is the action motivation thing, right? Action leads to results, which leads to more motivation, which leads to more action. But it can go this way as well, right? So doing something, right? Like this is the be, do, have cycle as well, right? We've talked about this, where if I do the thing, I become more of the person who does more of the thing, right? And at some point, I am this person. And so then I have the things that person has. So this is Sky, right? She does the thing. I'm going to go shoot down the meteors. So then she becomes more of the person who does things that are hard. So then when her jet goes down, she does it without any things. So then she becomes more of the dog, not the person, the dog who's like, I can face anything, right? No pup is too small. So then when a new situation is confronted to her, she has become the person who believes that no pup is too small. And so what she has is the belief that I can do this. But that comes from the action piece of this. So this is something that is a very common story for people. Okay. And I'll say this coming back to my story from the very beginning. And again, this is we just cape for Megan on this podcast is what we do. We just make her, because she really is. She's a superhero. So
she's a superhero.
Right, as I'm doing this, buying these programs, right? This is money coming out of Jeff and Megan, right? We together are investing in my business, right? So at this point, not a ton of return on these investments, right? And it's a consistent thing where now we get to the last one and she's like, why is this going to be any different? Not because she doesn't believe in me, but she's like, every other time you've said the exact same things. I'm like, I really think this is going to work for me. Like, I think this is the right plan. I could see the path for this. Like, so understandably, she's like, help me understand what's different here? And and that's a tough question to answer, right? I think that a lot of people have experienced this as well. Like if you listen to the episode with Ashley, right, she talked about this, where she would start a lot of different things. And I think this is a story for a lot of people. It's like, oh, I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
start this, I'm going to start this, I'm going to start this. And at some point we stop kind of getting as invested with people,
Mm-hmm.
because we kind of expect the inevitable failure, because and then we also do it as well. Like
Mm-hmm.
I kind of expect the inevitable failure. Like
Mm-hmm.
when I first started working out, or not first started, but when I when the last time that I started working out where I didn't stop was
Yeah.
before my wedding. So it was January of 2016. I did it literally with the full expectation of I'm going to get in the best shape of my life for the wedding, and I'll probably be right back here 3 to 6 months later.
Mm-hmm.
That was the expectation. Like I expected it to not last, because that was all I had ever experienced.
Mm-hmm.
Was I do this for a bit, I get the results, I get the t-shirt, and then I go back to the way things are, because I've never experienced anything different. So why would I
Mm-hmm.
expect anything different?
Mm-hmm.
And that becomes difficult because you almost feel like you're convincing yourself, and sometimes convincing the people in your life, that this is different. And that's a hard thing to do, because it feels
Mm-hmm.
like the limiting belief there is, I'm not going to be successful here. But that's the be do have cycle in reverse.
Mm-hmm.
I constantly give up, so then I become the person who give, you know what I mean? Like it goes
Mm-hmm.
that way. And it's just the degrees to which we do this.
I think we've all experienced exactly what you're talking about.
In any context, I think.
Exactly. Not just in fitness, but in
Yeah.
literally anything.
I wasn't
Sky's my
sure.
new role model.
That's why she's my favorite pup. That's what
What would
the
Sky
end.
do?
What would Sky do? Well, we get to this point here where, um, so it's how we enter. Right, we enter with these limiting beliefs, and so a lot of it's owning the fact that, like, this is the story that I tell myself. This is the expectation that I have.
Mm-hmm.
And again, if you listen to the episode with Ashley, she talked about this. Where like 3 weeks in, she's like, I asked for my money back, because I expected, like, I had hit a hurdle, and I didn't I had always just that was the end of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where having somebody in your corner makes all the difference in the world, because the natural inclination is to go to what we've always
Go to
experienced.
the comfort zone, even if the comfort zone is not a great place.
Yes. So, and I'm going to say this, and I'll do full disclosure, and this is not but I almost forget this every time that I do this, but I'll lift the veil a little bit on the business side of things, because I think we can do this. But so 3 times a year, I do what I call a launch. Like 3 times a year, I do like an intentional, hey, I'm opening the door for clients. I do it other
Mm-hmm.
times throughout the year, but 3 times a year, I do like a week and a half long, like, push is maybe a little bit of a strong word, but like, hey, I'm gonna go here.
Mm-hmm.
And part of the process of working with a client, for me, the first step is we get on a call.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been an interesting thing for me to like shift the the mindset for these calls for me. Like it's early on, and one of the reasons why I think I struggled with this was like people called them sales calls, and I don't like the idea of being a salesman.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I call them breakthrough calls, where the shift for me is the goal is not for me to enroll this person into my program. That's not the purpose of the call for me.
Mm-hmm.
The purpose of the call for me is to understand where they are, right? The A and B piece, right? Where are you? How did you get
Mm-hmm.
to this point? And then where do you want to be? Right. And then
Mm-hmm.
once we have A and B, then we can figure out what's the path. And if I think I can help with that path, then I'll say, like, hey, listen, I think I can help you. If you have an interest in talking about that, we can talk about what that looks like.
Mm-hmm.
But oftentimes I'm like, I don't think you need me. Right. Or maybe you need somebody else more.
Mm-hmm.
Um, And when I shifted that, it became a lot simpler for me because I think of it as coaching call, right? Like, hey, we're just going to
Mm-hmm.
get on the call and I'm going to coach you through this. And some of my favorite quote unquote success stories are people who never signed up for coaching with me, but have like pointed to that call as a catalyst for them to do what it is that they knew that they already needed to do. And so they did it
Mm-hmm.
without me. They did it with not even with another coach. They just did it. And somebody asked me like, is that an issue for you? Like, I'm like, no, that's not an issue for me. Like, it doesn't bother me at all.
Mm-hmm.
Because if they could do it on their own, like, do it on your own. Like, you know what
Mm-hmm.
I mean? Like, I'm here to help when people like, hey, you could probably use somebody in your corner.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I say is like, listen, my role here is not just providing you with nutrition advice and a workout program. Like, that's part of it, but it is to
Mm-hmm.
kind of help you navigate, like we talked about, the mindset aspect of things and unravel the things that we believe. But that call, when I treat it as the first coaching call, is really interesting because so I'll offer it to people if I think I'm like, hey, based on I'm having conversations with people and they say like, hey, I'm struggling with this or whatever. I'm like, well, I'd love to chat a little bit more and see you know a little bit more about what's going on and understand what's going on. Maybe we hop on a call. And they say, great. And so we schedule a call. And so I had a bunch of calls scheduled for this week. And I like forget that this happens, but it happens every time I do a
Every
launch.
time.
But I like black it out. That people reschedule or cancel.
Mm-hmm.
And I always get frustrated. I'm like, why? Why this is, I mean, the natural selfish piece of it, or maybe not selfish, but like the I'm like, I set aside the time. Like, come on now. But more than that, it's like, why isn't this happening for you? Like,
Mm-hmm.
what's the
What's your
hurdle?
barrier here?
Yeah. And when, again, this is always with limiting beliefs and within yourself and with other people. And you and I talked about this yesterday in a different
Mm-hmm.
context, but it's always the case is if we start by asking questions, then we're much more likely to be able to come up with a solution. So
Mm-hmm.
if I just get pissed and I'm like, these people, right? Like that wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
be very good at all. And I wouldn't be good at
Right.
my job. But if the question is like, why is this kind of the thing for
Mm-hmm.
you where we kind of keep pushing and pushing and pushing it off? And oftentimes by the time I get people on the call, they recognize like I was nervous, right?
Mm-hmm.
I have failed at this a lot. Um, it's not that they don't want it. It's that they're afraid to do it because they've only ever experienced failure.
Mm-hmm.
Or to, again, maybe toot Ashley's horn a little bit, right? The fact that she got on the call with me when we had our regularly scheduled call to say like, hey, can I have my money back, basically? But then I could talk her through that versus the people who like they miss a call for whatever reason. Sometimes it's valid, sometimes it's not super valid. But if you miss a
Mm-hmm.
call with me, and this is just, I understand in the process of this, if you're a client for me and we miss a call in the first 8 weeks and you don't, and we can't get that call rescheduled within a week and a half,
Mm-hmm.
you're probably gone. Not from me. Like, I'm going to continue to pursue you, but that's when I know people are going to ghost me.
Mm-hmm. It's no
And then
longer a
they stay.
priority for whatever reason.
Well, and it's not even it's a and I say it to people on that first call. I'm like, if you work if I work with you as my client and I'm your coach, the only way that I can help you is if I know what's going on. So you have to run towards me and not away from me.
Mm-hmm.
But the natural inclination, and this is because of the limiting beliefs and because of the noise that we get, is I have failed because I'm not doing XYZ.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, I don't want to, I don't want to tell Jeff that I failed. Right. And it's a little bit of looking in the mirror and being like, I don't want to, embrace this piece of it, which I understand. Right. It's
Oh
not
my God,
fun to say
yes.
that.
Admitting failure sucks.
It sucks. But what I've always tried to communicate is like to clients is my expectation is not that you're successful. My expectation is that you're going to struggle with this.
Mm-hmm.
Like it just is. And so
Mm-hmm.
we're problem solving. It's not I'm not your teacher giving you a grade,
Mm-hmm.
right? We're in problem solving mode. We're in solution finding. I am
Mm-hmm.
Detective Jeff figuring out what's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't do that unless you're here. But it's these limiting beliefs that keep us like I'm ashamed, I feel guilty, and I'm doing what I always said I was going to do. And again, it becomes that self-fulfilling prophecy. Before I jump in, right? I'm afraid. I'm like afraid to get on the call because I don't want to confront the realities of my life
Right.
because I've just done this so many times, which is understandable, and it sucks to feel that way. And then we go one step further, which is all right. Maybe I believe that Jeff can help me, and I'm going to dive into this, but it's scary.
Mm-hmm.
Right, I'm going to invest in myself, but I feel like this might be like money out the window because I've spent money before. I spent a
Mm-hmm.
lot of money before, and I
Mm-hmm.
haven't seen progress or made had anything stick. So why would this time be any different? And then when things start to go that way, we say, well,
See? Told you.
see, told you this was dumb, and what a waste of money that I worked with, and it's not that. And it's not that you failed. It's that we expected a certain thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then when anything led us in that direction, we just assumed that that was the end of the movie. Right? What are the best movies? The best movies are ones that, all right, for me, it's rom-coms, right? But the best movies are, or Disney movies.
Under the
But
Tuscan Sun and Fried Green Tomatoes. Like, those are the only two.
but the idea is it's a movie that gives you something unexpected.
Mm-hmm.
Right? The idea that like if I'm in a movie now in certain contexts, right? Like having but like, and my mother-in-law will I think appreciate this. I don't know if she ever listens, but I think she'll appreciate this. My mother-in-law loves Hallmark Disney movies or Hallmark Christmas movies, right? Which are on year round. She watches them all the time, right? But listen, there's one Hallmark Christmas movie.
Yes.
It's just it's painted in 50 different contexts, right? But it's big city girl or guy goes to small
Mm-hmm.
town, whatever, gonna take over their shop or something like that. Fall
Falls
in
in
love
love.
in 2 days, betrayal because they
Mm-hmm.
find out that they were there for that, reconciliation, happily ever after they move to
Yep.
the boonies, and it's always set in New Hampshire or Vermont or whatever it is. It's
Well,
always
it's because they're the most beautiful in Christmas time with all the snow
yes,
that we actually didn't have this year. Like, it's
but
been a sad winter.
right, you start that movie,
Mm-hmm.
and 3 minutes into it, I could tell you the ending.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's known. That doesn't mean that it's not fine, but like the movie is played out. Like we know
Right.
exactly where it's going to go. Versus, I mean, let me pick a movie that's has a twist ending that everybody has seen. Um,
The
you
Sixth
know,
Sense.
the Sixth Sense, which I haven't seen, but I know what the twist ending is, right?
How have you not seen this?
Well, so part of it is
you're a little bit young for
well,
when it
but
came
here's
out.
the other thing, right? I knew the twist before I saw the movie because it came out when I was like, I don't know, 10 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so everybody was quoting the ending.
Mm-hmm.
And so I knew the line, right? If you haven't seen it, spoiler, right? He's dead the whole time. Bruce Willis is dead the whole time, right? But I've never seen the movie. I've never seen the movie, but I know that that's the ending, right? I know the context is Bruce Willis was dead. I see dead people, right? Like, but that I see dead people. So there's two sides of it. For everybody who watched the movie for the first time, they were like, "Oh my gosh, blew my mind." But for me, I knew what the ending was, and so there's no point in me watching the movie.
Yeah, that's true.
I have no desire to watch The Sixth Sense now because I know what happens.
Mm-hmm.
And so all of the, I don't know, not all of the value, but most of the value of the movie is in the twist.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then you watch it back and you like see all these things and you're like, oh, that's kind of cool. But you re-experience it if you've experienced it for the first time. Or like even not quite twist endings, but like the Oceans movies. Right,
Oh, yeah,
Ocean's 11,
good.
Ocean's 12, right, where the
like,
montage
Oceans,
at
like
the
Titanic?
end. No, like
I was like,
the
we all
Oceans
knew how Titanic
movies
was
where they
end.
do the like at the ending, like this is how we did the heist sort of thing.
Yeah, I do love
like,
those.
And then you go back and you're like, oh, that's kind of cool, like how that happened.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't know how it's going to happen. Well, you have no idea like how this is going to play out throughout the whole thing, especially Ocean's 11. You're like, oh, I totally had no idea how that was going to play out. It's not the same high stakes, but when the movie's already played out, then it's like some of our enjoyment of it's gone. Particularly with something that is we're looking for the ending, right? The ending of the movie to be a certain way, right? This is why Megan doesn't watch movies more than once. Like she basically doesn't watch movies more than one time. I, on the other hand, am a little bit of the comfort zone, and I like to watch some of the things that I know that I'm going to enjoy. But to go this direction, right? The payoff, like she watched a couple movies recently, and I'm going to bring this all back, I promise. She watched a couple movies recently that were this kind of vibe. I forget what they are. They're on Netflix. I didn't watch them with her because I don't love whatever kind of movie she was watching. Like I'm happy-go-lucky kind of guy. That's the other thing is like The Sixth Sense feels, it's a little too intense for me. M. Night Shyamalan's a little too intense for me. I'm a little bit pansy when it comes to my movies. But
hence why your favorite movie right now is Paw Patrol.
It's not my favorite movie right now. But it is the one that I'm watching the most because that's what my kids want to watch the most. My favorite movie of all time is and will forever be The Lion King.
Wow, you really like emotional heart ripped out within the first 5 minutes of the movie? That's like your jam?
Yeah.
You really like Bambi then? I think you'd really enjoy that.
No, Bambi is not. Bambi's not good. Bambi's mediocre. Oh, you're going to get me down a rabbit hole.
That's my job.
The Lion King shifted. This is what's so good about The Lion King. The Lion King shifted for me. I think I've told this story before. The Lion King shifted for me when I became a dad. So the saddest part of The Lion King is when Mufasa dies, right? It's not that anymore for me as a dad. It's right before that, where Zazu comes to Mufasa and he tells him, like, Mufasa, stampede in the gorge. Simba's down there. And Mufasa's face of pure terror. And he goes, Simba. That moment wrecked me. As soon as I became a dad, I was like, I would do anything for my kids. Like, it just wrecked me. Right. Or another one, and this is early in the movie, but underrated Pixar movie, The Good Dinosaur. So early in that movie, right, the dad dinosaur, like, is trying to save his son, and then but the look that he gives him right before he gets washed away is brutal for me as a dad, right? And so then it shifts the entire course of the movie because, again, the expectation, you get it a little bit differently. But so Megan watched these movies. There was no relevance to that, to what we were talking about. That was just an aside about movies that ruined me as an adult. But Megan had been watching some movies, right? And she was like, really, really good rising action. the whole movie, the endings were terrible, right?
Oh, that's a shame.
Yes, but this is the idea of it is if you can keep yourself involved, right? She watched the whole movie. Even if the ending wasn't necessarily what you expected at the beginning, she watched the whole movie because it wasn't determined. It wasn't predetermined at the beginning where the end was going to be.
Mm-hmm.
So this is kind of the whole limiting beliefs thing and bringing it all together and wrapping it up here. When we expect a certain result, it becomes a lot harder to go on the journey.
Mm-hmm.
Because we kind of know where it's going to end up.
Mm-hmm.
The things that we need in order to go on the journey, because where we end up might not be where we set out to go. Right. And we've talked about this with like goals will shift and things like that, right? Like yours have, right? From like getting smaller to not getting smaller.
Getting stronger.
Yeah, getting stronger. Like goals might shift along the way and you might not end up where you expected to when you first started.
Mm-hmm.
But you stay in the journey with a couple of things. One, you need a rider. You need somebody,
You need your
and I like
person.
that. I like that his name is Ryder, right? You need, the ride or die person. You need somebody to ride along with you, and you need somebody to tell you in the midst of the moment where you don't think that you can, that you can. That's a catalyst. That's a beginning. That's not enough, though, because so he says, "You're the reason I started saying the pups are soft." That gets her in the plane.
Mm-hmm.
Then she's got to do the thing. Even in the midst of her fear, right? She remembers what he says. In the midst of her fear, I'm going to do the thing. There will be a hiccup. Plane gets destroyed. He asks her in that moment, he's like, Sky, are you okay? And she says, yeah, I just got to ditch my jet. The difference in that versus how it would have been 30 minutes earlier in the movie is a result of his belief, right? But he's checking in with her. And also the fact that she'd done something, right? Then she does more things. So you continue to do the be, do, have cycle. You continue to do the action motivation cycle. You continue to do the thing. So then, even when the person who originally was the catalyst, and this is like not always the case, but somebody who was with you from the very beginning goes, I don't know about this, man.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, this is who I am now. You can't convince me otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've done it.
Mm-hmm.
So even the people who were with you maybe in the beginning, who were like, yeah, good for you. And this is an interesting thing. Now it becomes on their limiting beliefs about you. What you've always been to them.
Yep.
But if you become somebody different, you can be confident within yourself, not needing the external validation anymore to say, this is who I am. And it doesn't really matter what you think. Like, I care, but you don't have to believe this.
Yep.
Because
You don't
I
have to
do.
take it to heart anymore. Mm-hmm.
So when we're thinking about limiting beliefs that keep us stuck, right? It's most often that we expect failure. And it's because it's all we've ever experienced.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way out of that is oftentimes to have somebody who knows what success looks like and who tells us that you can do it. And then holds our hand a little bit through the process of when you get the inevitable hiccup, because it will come, not to let that steer you into what you've always expected, right? Because her jet getting destroyed could be like, oh, I am too small. I can't do it.
love Sky.
So I'll end with this, right? You think about, what is your limiting belief? The idea is, who do you want to be?
Mm-hmm.
Who's that person be? And what would they do? What would they say? How would they act in this situation?
Mm-hmm.
And then do that thing, as uncomfortable as it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
No pups too small.
What would Sky do?
What would Sky do? Thanks for listening, gang. We'll see you next time on Fit Parent Podcast. Have a good one.